everybody. Thanks for joining us. We are here to talk about a show that is near and dear to many of us here, the show Hamilton. Music Theater Wichita has had the honor of having many of our alumni go into this show, but the folks that we've spent the most time with in recent months talking about this and fantasizing about it and looking forward to this conversation are Julius B. Thomas III, who has played Hamilton across the country at different times, but was hunkered down for a long run in the San Francisco company that recently had to take an intermission. And Miss Erin Clemons, who has toured the country as Eliza, but has played all of the sisters on Broadway and is currently contracted to the Broadway company of Hamilton. And she too is on an intermission, as those of us in the theatrical world are given pause. I am here at Music Theater Wichita, ready and willing to begin my 32nd season, but only on the condition that I have by my side the incredible Nancy Reeves, who has been here just about as long as I have, and who takes care of our company and who was overseeing and masterminding our trip to San Francisco to see Hamilton, having successfully engineered 3 trips to Chicago for our group to see Hamilton. Now, I saw the original Broadway cast, and then I saw it in Chicago 3 times, and then I saw Erin play it down in Tulsa. So I've seen it 5 times, and that would make me a big deal if it weren't for Nancy. Nancy, what is your experience achieving a Hamilton?
I saw the original Broadway company, and our alum Sasha was in that, Sasha Hutchings. And then I saw the Broadway company when Erin was ensemble, and then I saw her as Angelica. Then I saw Julius as Hamilton first in Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
And then I made a trip to San Francisco about a year ago, I guess. And I saw him in San Francisco in that company. And then I've seen it in Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and Kansas City, all with Erin as Eliza.
Wow.
So.
And what do you suppose it is, Miss Nancy? Have you been a longtime history buff?
No.
Are you someone who listens to, do you listen to rap music constantly on your radio and in your car?
Only when I was with Cody Davis, because he listened to rap. But it has made me go back into the history more and reading more about the facts.
So Erin and Julius, what were your first encounters with this show? When did it first cross your consciousness? And at what point did you have an inkling that you might have a path to cross with this show in a personal way? Erin?
Yeah, so I first heard of the show when it was downtown at the Public and everybody was trying to get a ticket and couldn't. And then when it transferred to Broadway, I was actually doing Les Mis next door to Hamilton. So I actually had to call through the crowds of Hamilton every day to get to work. So it was insane. I even have a picture that I took looking out the window of Les Mis at this huge crowd that Lynn would gather before the show. Yeah, so that was my first time. And then I saw the original Broadway cast and I was like, this is amazing. I'm never going to be good enough to be a part of this. And then maybe like a year later, they started calling me in to audition for the show. So. And
would that have been a casting director for Hamilton?
Yes. So the first time I went with the casting director and Tommy Kail.
Oh, wow.
Do you remember how many times you auditioned before you booked it?
3. It was 3 times, but it was over the course of like a year.
That's crazy.
That's
Julia?
Crazy. Oh my goodness. I probably went in for the show. I think I've auditioned for the show about 30 times. Every male character except for George Washington and Hercules Mulligan. Yeah, they really put me through the ringer at Hamilton, and we finally, this is a funny story. I'll try to tell it quickly. By the time we got down to them saying we want to see you for Hamilton, I actually said no. I said I was going to pass on going in for Hamilton because I didn't think I was a Hamilton. I knew I was a Burr. I had made it up in my heart and in my mind I was going to play Burr. And they said, no, we've seen you for everything else. Just come on back in and do this one more thing for us. And I was like, all right, well, this is not going to happen. And this is the thing that actually happened. Hamilton actually happened for me.
Yes, it did. You marvelous, marvelous, talented man. And, when we see the movies and actors audition for something, they waltz onto a Broadway stage and they say, oh, I'll do Singin' in the Rain in G. And they do the song of their choice. And there's an orchestra that strikes up. And they say, you're wonderful, you're hired. So what is the reality of auditioning for Hamilton? Because I've heard from a lot of people what you are asked to do.
Yes. Who, me?
Yeah.
Well, the reality is that for Hamilton and some of the other males, they have a lot of screening processes. So you initially go into the room with one lone casting director who says, all right, let's hear you do all 5 songs from this one character. And then you get done doing that and they give you little tweaks and little notes. And then they say, okay, did we ask you to prepare any other characters? And you say, yes, you gave me actually 3 characters, 5 songs from each. And so you end up giving a little concert for that casting director. And then they say, all right, great. Well, if we like you, we'll have you come back on tomorrow and we'll have 2 more people in the room. And maybe this time we'll film you. And that process just continues and continues. And they build more people. So you have a little army in the room that's sort of watching you do your thing and critiquing you and giving you notes. And that's how I ended up with about 30 auditions under my belt.
And how many roles have you actually played? Because when you first went out with the show, you were on tour, you were in the show, and you covered several roles.
Yes.
Tell us which roles you have actually played in front of a paying audience.
Yes. So I started out as the standby for Hamilton. So I was the 1 show a week Hamilton. Hamiltons only do 7 instead of 8. And then I also covered King George III and Aaron Burr. Now, I actually went on more for King George than I ever went on for Aaron Burr. I only ever went on for Aaron Burr 4 times. And I probably went on for King George about 20 to 25 times. So it was just this really strange thing.
So all he has to do is come out, stand there, and sing that song. So why was he missing so many shows? I want to know.
Oh, our lovely King George, JP, he happened to roll his ankle in Vegas, actually, probably out doing slots or something. No, he has a pair of heels in the show that are probably a good 2 inches high. And he happened to roll his ankle. So he had to spend some time just recuperating and healing. And I got to benefit and play the role quite a few times while we were
And then what Vegas. Other roles? Any other roles?
Just Aaron Burr, just those 3.
And Hamilton.
Just Hamilton.
and were you ever in the show, in the company, if you weren't one of those roles, or were you always standing by in case one of those roles needed you?
I was fortunately always standing by, normally taking a nap in the dressing room somewhere, or if I wasn't taking a nap, I was in a rehearsal room somewhere going over my 3 different tracks and trying to remember my numbers and things of that nature.
Right.
So yeah.
And the first time you went on, did you actually get to practice on the rotating stage, which is 2 or 3 different circles going different directions?
It's 2. We've got an inner circle, which we call the, I think it's the turntable, and then the outer circle, which is called the donut, because it has the middle sort of cut out. And I did. The wonderful thing about Hamilton, and because the turntable is such a character in the show itself, they build the turntable in the rehearsal studio in New York when you first start out. So you have the turntable from day 1. And then there are days where the understudies and swings and standbys get time to just like do all the things that they want to do. Hamilton's, since you do the show once a week and you start the very first week with the main Hamilton, I actually got to run the show in the rehearsal studio before we even left New York. So I felt pretty prepared as far as the turntable is concerned, and as far as my cohorts were concerned. We got some time together, so I was very fortunate.
What about you, Erin? How did you come into it? What prep did you get before you went on for the first time? How many roles have you performed in it?
So I have performed all three of the sisters many times. Obviously, Eliza more than the other one. So when I came in, I've been a replacement all three times that I've come to this show. So I did not get the picture. I did not get much rehearsal time on the turntable. I think we probably did it maybe twice before I would be on. And when I first the show, I had gone on for my ensemble track, Angelica and Eliza, within the first 2 months that I was there, or 2.5 months, which was insane, but also really great because you get to rip the Band-Aid and just get it over with.
Yes.
But yeah, it was a pretty fast process when you're replacing, because in Hamilton they give you a little more time than other shows just because it's a lot of show. But it's still only 3-4 weeks for each role, which is pretty fast for Hamilton because there's so much going on. So I remember the first time I did Helpless as Eliza, I was like, oh my gosh, because it's the everyone's there, you're running across the turnpole and all the things, you're in your costume, it's wild.
Nancy, in your many visits to this show, you have seen the regular cast, you've seen understudies, you've seen alternates, I think you've seen people pulled in from other companies because there was a need in a company. How does the show affect you? How much of the show gives you the same experience every time you see it? And how much of your seeing it that many times is a fascination with how the dynamics change depending on who's particularly strong in a company?
Well, at this point, I'd like to cast my own company.
Yes.
These two as the leads.
Yes.
And then I have a favorite Burr, I have a favorite, everything. But I think when I know somebody in the show, like Erin or Julius, I pay more attention, I think, maybe, or it hits me harder than when I see it and I don't know anybody in it. It's just that people are so powerful and the roles are so great and meaty, and so they're all different. And I have favorite parts of each company I've seen.
Yes. And so, Nancy, when you think of this show and somebody's going to ask you about it, somebody comes up to you at one of our music theater shows and says, hey, Nancy, thank you. I don't know how you did it, but you got me tickets for Hamilton. What should I expect, or what should I do to prepare for it? What do you tell them?
Well, I always suggest that if they're not familiar with the music, to hear the soundtrack before the cast recording. Yeah, cast recording. Before they go see the show, because it is music that most of us are not typically listening to, the rap and the rhythm, and so many words so fast. So that's the first thing I tell people do. There's a great book, as you know, because I think you gave it to me, about it, that is good to read before you see it. I saw it first and then I read through the book. But just be familiar with it is when I say know some of the songs and research some of the characters. Just be informed.
All of that can add so many layers to it. But if you suddenly find that you're going to have a chance to see it and you don't have time to do the prep, well, the first time I saw it, the cast album was not out yet. And so I just had to go and let the show wash over me in that first experience. And I've never seen a more attentive audience, people utterly sitting forward on their seats. Back to the old cliche people used to say all the time, oh, it had me on the edge of my seat. This was the first time, maybe in several decades, that I've actually seen people on the edge of their seat, not wanting to let a single syllable of it go by. Because what LinManuel Miranda did with this, in packing so much information into every line, he often says that Hamilton was so loquacious and used words so much that rap music is actually the exact kind of expression that should be given to a character like that, because you get so much information out quickly. The thing about LinManuel Miranda's rap is that there are smart internal rhymes that Stephen Sondheim or Lorenz Hart would be proud to claim. There's little references to all sorts of imagery that if you don't catch them the first time, you're still going to get the gist of what's being said. You'll still get the emotion of it. But the more you learn about it, the richer and deeper this show is. And I can easily see, Nancy, why you've seen it 10 times and why you might go 10 more if you have the chance. Suddenly, of course, the movie is going to be landing on our doorsteps July 3rd, far earlier than any of us would have expected. Julius and Erin, what do you know about this film and how it came to be? Do you know anything?
Erin, do you know?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it is, as far as I know, it is as close to the original Broadway company. I think that they have a couple of members that had moved on by the time they had filmed the show. But it's the original leads of the show, so you get to see the original intent for the roles. You know, things have sort of morphed now, and they've allowed other people to put their stamps on it, myself included. But you get to see LinManuel Miranda do the thing that he envisioned. And with the people that he chose to be the stars of the show. And so I think it's just going to be a really wonderful, even if you've seen the show before, it's going to be a really wonderful, different version of the show that just allows you another window into what Lin was thinking.
Do you know how many cameras they used? I remember reading, but I don't remember. But instead of it being a film, this is a filmed record of the original Broadway production, but shot not just like PBS with a couple of cameras out in front, but it was filmed sometimes with an audience, with multiple cameras on cranes, I imagine, and every sort of kind of camera work. And then I believe they went in and filmed some of it without an audience so they could have cameras in places that you never would see on stage. So when, well, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but when tragedy strikes the Hamilton household, we see it from an angle that we would not ever be able to see on stage. And having watched what Tommy Kail did with the Grease Live TV special on Fox, and how ingeniously they used cameras to put us in places that you don't get the luxury of being in, no matter how good your seat is in the theater. I'm very excited to see these people who know the show inside out, every inch of it, and what they're trying to emphasize in the stage production, now having everything that the stage gave them, but with the added bonus of being able to put an extra set of eyes somewhere where we physically could not have been before. I'm also curious to see, I imagine they sing all of it live. I imagine none of this has been pre-recorded and lip-synced because it would be too hard with that music and for the immediacy of it. So I don't know if they had the live orchestra there every time they did close-ups and pick-up shots and so forth. But I'm very excited to see what they've done.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really wonderful. Like you said, Tommy Kail is a genius. He moves very smoothly between the genres of television, film, and theater, and he's got a very natural eye for all three. And I think you hit the nail on the head. He, even in doing Grease Live, which is a musical that they decided to do on a soundstage, in Los Angeles, he still did that seamlessly. So I'm actually really eager to see what I have been missing from a different vantage point as well. So that just made me really excited in a different way.
Erin, did you ever get to work with Tommy Kail? For everybody, of course, is the original director of Hamilton and who worked closely with LinManuel Miranda. We were recently talking about In the Heights because last Friday on our Flashback Friday, we showed some clips from it. And Tommy Kail had gone to the same school, I believe, that Miranda did, Wesleyan, and came up to him in the drama bookshop and said, "Hey, I really like that piece of yours that you've been working on. If I were ever to direct it, here's what I would do." And that set this whole marvelous partnership in motion. But did you ever get to work with him one-on-one, Erin? Did he ever come in and work with you on any of your characters or see you do any of it?
Yes, he came to Oklahoma City actually and worked with us on our characters. And on Broadway, he came a lot when I first joined. So I've definitely gotten to listen to him a lot, but on tour was the first time I'd gotten to actually be in the room and ask him questions and have him reciprocate. And yeah, it's good to hear that original information is so helpful.
Now, Julius, you recently had an experience that was unique even in the history of Hamilton, going to Puerto Rico. Would you explain what that was and what your role was and how you observed what happened at that particular time?
Okay, yes. So Puerto Rico was this fantastic meeting of philanthropy and art and commercial theater. LinManuel's family is from Puerto Rico. His dad is I believe, a native of Puerto Rico. And he is very well involved there and does a lot for the island. And they took In the Heights there many years ago, and they also wanted to bring Hamilton there in order to sort of reinvigorate a place that has been hit hard by earthquakes and natural disasters and things of that nature. So many, many, many months and probably even years went into the planning of picking up a Hamilton company, setting it in Puerto Rico with Lin-Manuel as the stepping back into the role of Hamilton, and just doing something really wonderful for the island. It was fascinating. Well, first of all, I didn't even have to go on. I already knew the role. I'd learned it already many moves before. And so it was sort of a vacation for me and also an opportunity for me to just sort of watch the original intent in person, watch Lin-Manuel sort of step back into the shoes of Hamilton after having a little time to like be away from it, which is really lovely for an actor to take a breath from a role, grow a little bit, and then come back to it. So it was wonderful in that way. It was also wonderful that I just got to lounge on the beach and not worry about anything because he did all of the performances. He really wanted to be there for everything. And we raised close to $15 million for the island, which it desperately needed, and sort of reminded folks that it was there and that tourism was something that that the island was sustained by, and just sort of said, like, Puerto Rico is open for business. Come back, So it just this sort of like really great convergence of all those things.
Nancy, can you help me name some of our other alumni who've been in it? Ryan Vasquez has been in the New York Company, and he's been on as Hamilton and other roles too, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Wanze
Johnson was in the touring company.
Julian Ramos.
Yeah, which company?
He's
Philip.
Mm-hmm.
Jen Sassy, Philip Company.
Robert Ariza was in the Chicago Company.
Mm-hmm. Andy Tofa is in the other tours at Angelica.
Mm-hmm.
No, he's with me.
In San Francisco.
Yeah.
And, oh, gosh, there's more.
Oh, yes. Well, we mentioned Sasha Hutchings in the original.
Montego Glover.
Shanika Gooden was our star of Sister Act, and she'd been in the Broadway Company. Yes, Montego Glover was our Aida and our Sarah in Ragtime. And Justin Shoel had just joined your company. Did he actually get to go on before?
Yes, and he is excellent.
Oh, so good.
So good at all of his roles. I think he went on for two of his, for Philip and for Lafayette Jefferson, and I'm so impressed by him.
Oh, that's great. Well,
and then Chloe, who was with us last year, joined the San Francisco Company.
Yes.
Patrick Garr.
Yes, in the Broadway, the blondest guy ever. If you had put a whole spreadsheet of all the people who've ever been in the Company of Music Theater Wichita and said, who is the least likely person to go into Hamilton? It would be our Barnaby Tucker, Patrick Garr. But there he is. It just shows that this is a wide range of talents needed for that show. Nancy, when the company kids talk to you about their experiences with the show, what are some of the things that come up? What do they talk to you about? I know it's a show that has a lot of physical discomfort that is a frequent challenge for company members.
I think the thing Justin told me was the family feel of the company. When he joined San Francisco, he just felt right, with it. And everybody was so kind and encouraging. And that's kind of what everybody kind of says, is it's such a warm, happy company. And so many Broadway shows, it seems like they're not always happy.
Yes.
But I just hear good things. And back to the audience, the thing I notice in the audiences they are so quiet. There's not all the people wrestling. There's not people up and down to the bathroom. And it's so quiet, as theater should be.
Well, yes, nobody wants to miss a thing.
No.
And of course, it's not a show that ever has a lull. It is in constant motion, and it's constantly challenging you to make all the connections. And the thing that I mean, everything about it impresses you. But I remember thinking on the first viewing of it in New York that this was a show that looks like it sounds. It sounds like it breathes. It breathes like it thinks. The whole thing is just so organic that when somebody makes a gesture, it's the perfect gesture for the lyric. And when somebody takes a dance step, you might not know why, but it just feels like you learned something from that movement that they chose to do with that particular lyric. And you don't have time to process it on an intellectual level every time, but you just know that it's right, that somehow when they thrust forward or they tilt at an angle or something like that happens, it helps you perceive both the truth of the storytelling, but also the emotion of the moment. And it's just breathtaking to me. What's that like from an insight thing?
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely a testament to Andy Blankenbuehler. And I feel like the whole team, just that they care so much about the show, no matter how big it gets, because they come back to us frequently and we will go over all those specifics. And they really, really, really want you to, get it right and know the intentions. And it's like, once you learn those intentions, like the little breaths or like, what you're supposed to be doing in my shot, like the feeling of that groove, it's like when you hear them tell that back to you, you're like, oh my God, this is like amazing. It's like every little thing Andy, thought of. He's just really genius. Like every time he comes and gives us a speech, you're like, oh my gosh, you're like amazing. He's just so specific.
Now, about the physical challenges of it, is the stage slanted? Is it a raked stage? No. It's a flat stage, but it has the double turntable. And a lot of climbing of stairs, right? Because I'm with Nancy. I watch the whole show if it's a time when I don't know anybody in it. But if I know somebody, I tend to watch them all night. And how busy Eliza is, for instance, just being in the wings, just singing, just handing something to somebody. It is never stopping, even when you're not the focus of attention. And I know that some of
rarely.
Rarely off stage.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I think there are angles where dancers have to hold each other and they rotate on the donut, and doing that 8 times a week, I'm sure, can throw people's spines out of whack and can make having a physical therapist on site a necessity. Do they do that?
Yes, they do. We each company, as far as I know, has their own traveling physical therapist, unless you're in New York, and then I'm sure they probably send them to one of the very specific Broadway houses like Neurosport, or I don't. Where do you guys go, Erin, for Broadway?
It was Arts, but they closed, so I think now it's Neurosport.
Gotcha. Yeah, and just sort of stepping back to talking about Andy Blankenbuehler and his specificity. Some shows are very much all energy the entire time, all like as big as you can make things. Like we want you to really go 100%, 1000% of the time. And that's never been Andy's intention. And even not being one of the dancing characters, I've sat and I've listened to him. It is very much intention based. He's very much a director who also choreographs. He's saying you don't need to do this move at 100% because your character is not at 100%. You're in a space that is tightly controlled and you're really well wound up. And in that moment, you wouldn't be flailing all over the place. What you would be doing is very tightly, intensely controlling your movement. So he does a good job of coming in and reining things in and bringing things back down to their original intent, which also saves the bodies. And I've just watching that has been really lovely to see that you don't have to physically kill yourself every night in order to make this thing happen, because doing things 8 times a week, I don't know who decided that was a healthy thing to do, but it actually isn't. It isn't. You would never see an opera singer sing 8 shows a week. You might see them sing 2 times a week, if that. But somewhere along the way, it became very normal for theater performers to do this thing. And so preservation of your bodies and your instruments and things of that nature is something that we all have to take very seriously. And I appreciate that Andy does that like a director.
And are the tables on stage, are those really heavy? Because those guys, the cast is just lifting those like they weigh nothing. When they bring them on, bring them off, move them.
I mean, they are real wood, so I don't think they're like super light. But yeah,
I do think they have some heft to them, because people have to stand on them and jump off of them and things of that nature. They have to be able to withstand some abuse, but they are built for the stage, in that they aren't 19th century actual heavy wood table.
Yeah. Just adding all that to dancing is just like, wow.
Yeah. They do a really good job in Hamilton of taking care of us. Even right down to the physical vocal demands. I'm blanking on names right now. Alex Lacamoire he's very specific in what it is he wants, but he also is very willing to allow you to figure out how to do it healthily. So I just am very, very glad for that.
Yeah. I feel like they've learned to be gracious with us. Like, if you need to be out, they don't give you like a really hard time about it. Like, they have learned that the show is very, very hard, and that we need grace in order to be able to do it 8 shows a week, or however many a week.
Of course, the show, we've talked about the physicality of it and the emotional journey it takes, but the actual technical spitting out of that many words and not blowing your voice out by trying to give too much. It's like you have to stay facile with words, and you can't belt loudly and get a lot of words out. You have to, it seems to me, as an outsider, that you have to keep the words right somewhere in here. The mics have to be very, very sensitive. You still have to project enough to be a theatrical performance, but it cannot be just full out, or you just couldn't get that many words out per second. How often do they drill, or is it just at understudy rehearsals or a new put in? How often do the vocal people come in and say, I think we're getting a little sloppy here, we need to look at this? Or once it's learned that well, does it tend to stay crisp no matter how many times a week you do it?
I feel like they come in a lot. Like, the MDs are very good about keeping people like on task, but then, the creative come in and they are very specific about how they want it. And like you're saying, I think for me personally, I learned that things need to be like right here, because if you're singing the whole show back here, like, you're done. Like, you're doing 2 or 3 shows and you're out, because it's just like you're saying, it's so many words, and it's pop music, it's rap, it's like that, all that music is right here. It's not this like big, like sweeping, like Les Mis thing. So I think that's really, LAC is super helpful, like Julius was saying, just in helping you find what's best for you, and also how you can make that work within his parameters of what he would like to hear from the show.
Yeah, I missed the very beginning of that, but if I, because of a little bit of a lag there, but if I could just add, it's also been really interesting from a personal standpoint to have to think of Hamilton as sound production as opposed to singing. I'm a singer. That's what I do best. That is the thing that I've made my way in this business doing is being a singer. And so when it came down to doing Hamilton, there's not very much singing happening. There's a lot more sound production and just sort of trying to figure out what the difference between those two things has been a really interesting, tough at times journey. Of just going, how can I produce the maximum amount of sound with the best amount of diction without tiring myself out doing it 7 times a week or hurting myself doing it 7 times a week. And, it's a trial and error thing. And you ask for help when you need help, and you rely on your technique when you need to rely on your technique, and you go to the doctor when it's time to go to the doctor, and you rest when you need to rest. It's one of the things about us is we're not robots. And so as much as we would love to be able to do it 20 times a week, the body sometimes just says, no, this week you're going to sit still. And we have to be able to listen to that.
Yeah, I think too, it's like, for me, it's like good to remember that even the original cast, most of them did not do the show for more than a year. So it's like now you have people who have been doing the show like 2 and 3 years, and that's a whole other beast than like doing a show for a year and you're done. So, and those people were unicorns of entertainment. I mean, they're amazing. So it's like, if most of them didn't even do it that long, then let's like have grace with ourselves as well.
Yeah.
It's such an emotionally rich show. And certainly Alexander Hamilton and Eliza have among the deepest journeys, the greatest exhilarations, and the deepest personal losses in the show. How much can you invest in that every night and survive doing it 7 or 8 times a week? Or do you find a way to tap into things that are meaningful for you that make those emotions what I'm asking you actor secrets, and you don't even have to answer this actually, but can you share anything with the lay people who may be listening, because you cannot live the loss of your child 8 times a week and be a sane person. You have to be able to bring truth to it, but you have to protect yourself in a way too without it becoming mechanical. What is that walk like after this many times?
Do you want to go first, Erin?
Sure. For me, I actually had to learn that the hard way, that you cannot have your son die every day in your head. So that took me a while to sort of like get out of that. And I actually started leaning more on like breath work and sort of like using the body in order to do that rather than my mind, because when you get wrapped up in that, like you're saying, day after day, it's not good for your psyche. But I also started meditating a lot. I would meditate before and after the show. And sometimes if you need to see a therapist because tour is hard, roles are hard, like you got to do what you got to do in order to, get yourself through and do the things that make you feel good during the day in order to have the energy to do that. So whether for you that means hanging out with friends or calling your family or working out, like you have to, for me, I had to have like those endorphins of working out or walking or being in nature in order to then bring myself to that dark place every day. And for me, I don't know about you, Julius, but the 2 show days are the hardest because you've already done the journey. And then you're like, whew, that second helpless would always be like, okay, like I'm trying to yank myself back up for this number. But
okay, I've never met this man. I'm going to meet this guy, and it's going to be swell. And yeah,
you still have the streaks from the earlier show's makeup.
What about you, Julius? And I would say too, your character has to drive the show in a way that few leading men do. I played John Adams in 1776, and those historic guys that had to build this country and overcome all those obstacles. And John Adams is a role that you come on bossing people around in the very first moments and battling all sorts of obstacles to get to the end of the show. And that role is nothing like what Hamilton demands of a person. But I remember, how hard that was to do, and to do multiple times. So you not only have the love story and the mistakes that he made with a love story and the loss of family, but you also have to push this show from the beginning. I'm Alexander Hamilton, he says at the end of the first number, and then you've got to drive the country to this direction. And you have very few moments when you can sit back and relax and let somebody else carry the momentum. What's that like for you?
It's something that I was really happy to sort of take on, and I carry a lot of pride and sort of this may be my one chance. So that's one of those things that sort of propels me every night. But at the end of the day, like Erin said, 2 show days are incredibly tough, and I have to believe that everything that I've done up to this point has sort of been grooming me to allow me to experience all these things several times over without going crazy. A lot of the shows you saw my Broadway debut, Wayne. It was the Scottsboro Boys, very heady material that literally, we're still living that stuff today. We're still dealing with the ramifications of trials like the Scottsboro 9. And so doing that every day helped me understand that, okay, when the curtain comes down, I have to figure out a way that allows me to still be a sane human being and to walk in, 2010, which is when that show happened, and not still be in 1920, where the show took place. And so I started discovering, the things that I needed, which is cartoons. I love animation. I love cartoons. So I come home after a show, I put on the Cartoon Network. I may not even pay attention to it, but I have it in the background, and something about that soothes me. And then, my first leading man opportunity was Motown, and it was 2 hours and 47 minutes of being on stage and talking and singing and just going at it really hard. And I believe that is one of the things that allowed me to understand pacing and to figure out how to do it convincingly every night, but not, blowing my voice out and not blowing my body and my brain out. So and there are lots of other examples that allow me to sort of reach back and say, how do I do this moment? What do I pull from to make this make sense to me? And it's all just been about the journey.
So of other roles you've done, what are, if you could take a 2-week vacation from this show, you'd probably just want to go on vocal rest. But are there other roles that are lingering out there that would be a nice contrast to this, that would let you do something different? Erin was very good about getting out of a couple shows and coming and being Esmeralda for us in Hunchback.
Ooh.
And Mary Magdalene in Jesus Christ Superstar. She was beautiful in both of those, and they worked out with her timing on other things. But is there something else in the pipeline for you, Ms. Erin? And Julius, is there something that you think would be a really nice contrast to playing Alexander Hamilton for a couple of weeks?
Oh gosh. I would love to play Eurydice, but I don't know that that's a huge contrast. I'm kind of a masochist when it comes to roles. I love roles like that.
This is in Hadestown.
Yeah, yes, sorry.
She goes on quite a journey. But yes, at least Hadestown has more laughs than Les Mis, and Hamilton has a lot more laughs than Hadestown.
Yes.
So long as you don't go back to the French barricades, I think it's okay.
Yes.
Julius, or maybe for you, Julius, maybe it's taking some time off and doing an album, more of the concerts like the one that you did in Wichita, which was so much fun.
It was so much fun. I had a blast, and it sort of opened my eyes. I always was really nervous and scared about doing something on my own, doing a one-man situation, but it's slowly but surely becoming something that I'm very much interested in. But if I had my druthers, if I had the opportunity to, maybe even wipe 10 years off of my roster, I would want to play Youth in Passing Strange. Did you get to see that one?
Yeah. I understand.
It was. I like a role that is well thought out from the beginning to the end, that has a really great arc. Lots of times, I'm hired to just sort of like hop in there, sing a great song, tell a few jokes, and then sort of, move over and allow for the other people to finish telling the story. But I really, really have been spoiled with Hamilton to understand that like an arc really feels good to do every night. It feels very complete and very satisfying. So,
Erin, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. It is actually very hard to move on from Hamilton because it's such a good, like, layered, specific and rewarding show, even as hard as it is. And it's really hard to get out of it, which I think is why I've been doing it for 3 years.
This has been a very generous use of your time, both of you. We love that we've been able to stay in contact with you this year. Julius came to Wichita before everything shut down and did a really fantastic one-man concert. And Erin has just recorded a wonderful concert for us. No audience, but our friends at the Orpheum Theater invited us to use their stage space, and our friends at Digital Brand recorded it on a variety of microphones and cameras, and Jesse Workington played the piano spectacularly well. And Erin came up with a roster of songs that's really wide-ranging and really, really fun. And that'll be airing on our, I like to call it our MTW network, coming up, I think, in July. But it's been wonderful that even in the midst of all of this activity, we've been able to have one-on-one time with each of you and gotten to see you do things other than the roles that you've currently been playing multiple times a week. We love that you've stayed connected to us. When our company members come and spend a summer or two or four, and Nancy is the den mother and takes care of everybody and looks out for them and then stays in touch with them once they're gone. We just love the fact that you are not gone to us once you leave your college time here. That just means so much to us. I can't begin to tell you.
Me too. It always feels like home coming to Wichita for me.
It's true, and you heard me gush over and over and over again, and I meant every word that I said. I believe that I would not be where I am without my time at MTW. Having transferred from a biology major to a musical theater major, and only having 2.5 years to sort of figure everything out from music to dancing to, and to have you guys within my first semester sort of latch on to me and say, "Hey, we've got you." It changed the game for me, and I will always be grateful and always here for you whenever you need me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like I learned all my work ethic and how to be a kind team player at Wichita. It's like family.
Well, we love you both, and we love Nancy, even though she's not able to be with us right at this moment. Thank you so much for this time today, for making time for us. Don't be strangers. Stay in touch. We'll dream up some more projects. If there's time to do it and you're not committed to other things, then we'll try to take advantage of all this talent and all this warmth and all this goodness. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.